Hello and welcome back to mackCHAT. My name is Mackenzie Ellis and I am an organizational consultant and leadership coach and founder of my company, Mackenzie James LLC. This is episode 2 of mackCHAT, of this series that I'm doing on the art and science of collaboration. So I released the first episode a couple weeks ago, and the release of this podcast series is in conjunction with the gearing up and releasing of my business content, trying to get my name and brand out there, and also just providing myself a platform to interact with you all and interact with other guests that I will have on the show. I'm excited. I believe I will be recording an episode tomorrow with a friend of mine and a fun guest that I'm excited about. So that'll be the first one that I release in a week or two. But I wanted to get out this second episode to continue a little bit on the first episode, give a continued introduction into the concept of the art and science of collaboration, and just give a little bit more context, a little bit more details on the topics or the concepts and terms that might be coming up in future episodes, and also just to touch base and provide, another podcast episode. Updates since my last episode, I got engaged, so that's exciting. Joey, he's upstairs currently working, and yeah, we're just excited. It's an exciting time. It was beautiful. It was romantic. We were in Santa Barbara, which is a special place for us. I lived there for several years, and he knows it well, and we spent some of our weekends there, and just really, that's where we said I love you for the first time, and it was really romantic. And so he surprised me on the beach with a picnic at Golden Hour, and there was roses, and we had an excellent dinner, and it was just so fun. So that's really exciting. And yeah, so that's probably the biggest announcement of my life so far. So that's really exciting. We plan to get married next year, and we are having fun planning that and preparing for that. Just to recap, last episode, I did talk about more of my background, my history. I think I even went as far back as like where I grew up and where I'm from. So if you're more curious about who I am and just my experience and what I'm into these days, you can go back and listen to that first episode. But just to provide maybe a small recap of that, I left my career last year. It's been almost a year now, which is crazy. And I've been spending the last, 8 months or so really just diving into what I love. And that's actually kind of turned into this podcast. But I just love working with people. And so I knew that I wanted to continue helping teams and supporting businesses with their people, their systems, their processes to really bring alignment. So my business is really focused on solving misalignment in organizations between strategy, operations, and culture. And I really do that with specific techniques, methods, and frameworks that I bring into teams and organizations that build connection, collaboration, and community. And so I'm really excited to continue going with that. I have some new materials that I'll be releasing, some new video footage that my friend Nelson helped me put together, which is awesome. So lots of fun stuff coming. But yeah, I'm in a season of trying to get all of this out there and create a rhythm and a system to this content and a schedule for posting content. And it's hard. It's really difficult to do it. And so, I've heard people talk about this whole process, and I get it now. I understand how it's a difficult time, but I'm excited to be doing it. And then just a couple other things that are on my mind recently, or some updates. There's 2 books that I have started reading that I couldn't have come at a better time, and I'm excited to incorporate them even into this episode and then future episodes, as well as my business. And so the first one I actually just found last week at the bookstore, and Joey got it for me. And it's literally called The Art and Science of Connection by Kasley Killam. And she is awesome. So I just discovered her. I just discovered this book, and it's so funny that it has the similar title of this podcast. I originally actually chose this title. I was inspired by Priya Parker. She has a blog and a whole movement called The Art of Gathering. And so that's, that whole the art of blank, fill in the blank. I was inspired by that. And so I wanted to explore collaboration. And so I decided to call this The Art of Collaboration. And then I realized, hey, there's more to it of just an art. It's also a science. And so that's how that title developed. And that's actually a little bit of what we'll be getting into today, kind of the differences differences between art and science in collaboration and what I mean by that, and how that's going to shape future conversations of these episodes. But Kathleen Killam she kills it with this book. I mean, it literally wraps up everything that I've been researching and studying and talking about with people over the last, several years, really over the last, really a lot of my life, just because I'm so interested in the human experience and connecting with people. And when I left my career, almost a year ago, and I was sitting and doing my ikigai, which if you don't know what that is, it's a Japanese term of kind of like a framework of your purpose for life and coming up with, why you're driven, what you're good at, and what you can do. And really, I'm driven by connection. I'm driven by connecting with humans, and other individuals for various reasons and in various different ways. And that's sort of, I've known that that's always led me to where I've been and where I'm, and it's leading me now to where I'm going. So this really just ties it all together. But it's really cool because I'm only on like chapter 2 right now, but she really makes the case for social health as sort of this third pillar of the health of humans. And so there's 3 pillars, first being physical health, which has been around forever. And we have so many, frameworks and methods and treatments and apps and everything to help us with that. And then, so there's physical health, and then there's mental health, which, I'd say she kind of explains it in here, and that in more recent years, it's become more mainstream, mental health, thankfully. And so now they're developing more frameworks, methods, apps, there's therapy, all of that you can get involved with to improve your mental health. But no one has ever really talked about social health. And there's a ton of research, a ton of studies that are decades old that have been around, but they just haven't really been accumulated into, this understanding of social health. And so if you follow Kathleen, look her up, look up her, buy this book. It's awesome. She explains it. She's studied and done work at Stanford. She got her master's in public health at Harvard. And she's really just always been kind of in the field of social connection and trying to figure out how can we make that a part of our daily lives and improve that, because really being socially connected in healthy ways has actually proven to help people live better and live longer. And there's a lot of research and data around that, with studies of, billions of people, millions of people. It's pretty crazy how much is out there. It's just never really been brought into the fold under one concept. And so she's really, kind of been the key person to bring that forward. These ideas aren't necessarily her original ideas, but as far as bringing all of the research around happiness, loneliness, isolation, and connection, she's really brought that all under a framework and a method in which she calls social health. So that kind of fits into so much of what I'm doing right now, and I'll incorporate that into my own work. And then I've also been reading this book called Transitions by Dr. William Bridges, and he actually passed away, I believe, in 2013, but his wife, Susan Bridges, has always been a part of this work. And so this book, actually, I think he said that he started his career that led to this book in 1979, and I think he wrote this book not too long after that time. So this book has been out for a few decades. The second edition, I think, was 2004. But in this version, which was 2019, his wife, Susan Bridges, kind of, has done another preface to it. And there's a foreword in there, and she adds her own notes because they have the Bridges transition change management framework. They have a specific framework they bring into organizations and that they help with individuals. And so this has been really helpful because I've also started doing some individual coaching on the side, and I'm excited about that, of just talking and helping people work through significant changes in their lives. And I like this because it talks about the difference between change and transition. Change is, things that happen to us, external shifts, losing a job, losing a loved one, moving to a new city, etc. There's physical changes outside of us that happen to us. And then the transition is what happens within us. And so how we cope with that and how we deal with it. And they provide a really awesome framework. And so also, get this book. So both of these have been great. So just wanted to highlight that. For this episode, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the difference between art and science when it comes to collaboration, and maybe highlight a little bit of the science part of it. I, by no means have any expertise in the science piece of it. I literally had to research all of this and have been researching it and just have some notes here to talk about it, but wanted to introduce some important concepts and frameworks that might come up in future conversations where I will invite people who are experts in those areas to talk a little bit more about it in a practical sense. But just wanted to dive into that. So really, when we talk about the art and science of collaboration, and my kind of purpose for the last year has really been trying to figure out how we can come together in better ways, more productive ways, more effective ways to solve problems, come up with great ideas, and work together as humans. This also includes technology and includes, AI and all of that, and we'll get into that. But really, my interest has always been in how we come together. I think this pairs well with, in a sort of if you want a precursor to this, I would actually look into Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. And so for a lot of business leaders or entrepreneurs or, self-motivated individuals who are looking to kind of do their own thing, or even just for anyone who's looking for purpose in their life, I would definitely read that book. It's really fascinating, but he really gets at, why we do what we do and what drives purpose. And I would say that that's definitely the start to anyone who's looking to build a business or get into their own career. But then you really need to know how to execute that why. So once you have your why, now what? And how do you bring your why into groups, into team settings? How do you get buy-in? How do you win over other people? How do you generate or cultivate a shared vision and a shared purpose among other people? And I think this is where a lot of organizations struggle just naturally because, there's individual humans who are not perfect that are trying to, really perfect the art of their vision or their product or their service or whatever it may be. But ultimately you have people who are imperfect in all kinds of positions throughout a business. And so it brings up individual motives, it brings up, different personality styles, different strengths, weaknesses, etc. And so really if, businesses, especially their leaders, are not equipped to understand how we work together and how we come together to solve problems and execute that vision, it really can lead to disaster and chaos. And so that's what I'm really excited about. That's why I, got my certification in, workshopping and becoming an expert facilitator so that I can actually come in person or remotely with groups and help them through problems or coming up with new ideas or solutions. And that's really kind of the whole reason behind my business as well. So when it comes to collaboration though, that is the how we work together and how we interact with each other and how we connect to each other. There's an art and there's a science to it. And I would say the art is kind of how you do it, how you go about collaborating, whether that's your individual style, your personality, your creativity. It could be in the form of a meeting, or you could do a creative workshop, or you could do a one-on-one meeting, or you could simply send an email, or whatever it may be. There's different ways of communicating, different ways of interacting with people, and working together. And so that's the art of it, is sort of your stylized approach. It's also, being adaptable. And so I would actually refer to the term situational leadership, which is really being able to adapt to individual or to specific scenarios and being able to lead others depending on the scenario, whether it's a moment of crisis, whether it's a moment to be proactive, whether it's a moment to bring transformative growth, etc. So this is sort of the art of collaboration, is how we're coming together, the specific nuances we're putting on it, the communication styles, the strengths, the weaknesses, and also your empathy, emotional intelligence is a piece of it. How well are you able to understand and read the room and, change and adapt on the fly? And so that's all sort of the art of collaboration. So then the science is sort of everything that's kind of happening underneath that, or even, I guess you could say underneath or above it. But it very similar actually to kind of what I just talked about with change, where change and transition, where change are the things happening externally, transition is us coping with that and dealing with it. I feel like the art of collaboration is sort of the external piece of it. It's what we're bringing to the table, and then the science of collaboration is sort of all of the underlying things that are happening, that our minds, our bodies, and our spirits are sort of coping with. And so that includes psychology, sociology, organizational behavior, etc. And even communication. And so those are the sciences of, kind of what's going on, the mechanisms, I guess you could say. So, I'd say, like, in a nutshell, art and science of collaboration. Art is sort of the style and the approach. Science are the processes and mechanisms that come with it. And so just to touch on, a few here, I mentioned psychology. There are some concepts like social facilitation, which is the tendency for people when they are in a group setting, they tend to perform better on tasks when there's others around them. Or vice versa. I guess the negative aspect of it is it would create stress or anxiety. But that is social facilitation, is being in part of a team or part of a social group or gathering, has an impact on individuals. And I believe Norman Triplett was the psychologist who first discovered that social facilitation effect. There's also cognitive dissonance. So basically when two or more individuals are working together and they have differing beliefs or conflicting behaviors or personality styles, they have some sort of discomfort. Typically it's a mental discomfort, in psychology terms, but that usually motivates them and pushes them towards a resolution. I guess it's sort of like a fight or flight response. I guess some people will also shut down, or they will engage, and that's where you have different confrontation styles, etc. And the person who developed that theory of cognitive dissonance was Leon Festinger. I'm just throwing out some names here just to give some credibility, and also if you want to look it up and research more. And then thirdly, with psychology, we have groupthink. And this one's really common. I think a lot of people know this, but it's a phenomenon that occurs when groups make decisions, and I think specifically, incorrect decisions in order to sort of appease the overall consensus. And it says here, specifically pressured for a desire for harmony. So a lot of people may kind of just, go around this room and you say, yay or nay on an idea, and you're, person number 8 out of 8 people. And so far, 7 out of 8 have said nay. Well, you don't want to be the one person to kind of disrupt the system, so you follow suit and you go with harmony. But really, I mean, that one person could really have the expertise on the situation. They could really be the one that should be the decider on the situation. And so, we want to stay away from that. But we see that a lot in just, politics within the workplace and with team settings. And a lot of times it's personal, or there's conflict between a few people, or there's a position, or there's someone who has a position of power that the group doesn't want to upset. And so that's where groupthink comes in, and that one's huge, and we'll probably talk about that quite a bit. But Irving Janis was the research psychologist who introduced that concept of groupthink. So talk a little bit about psychology, but then we also can get into sociology. And I think this is a really interesting one that kind of goes along with the Art and Science of Connection book. But there's a couple different concepts here. You have social capital and social exchange theory. Social capital are, really just the networks of relationships that you have, whether you live or work or, your friends, family, whatever it may be, but it's that network that enables collaboration and ultimately some sort of collective action. And so when you have a company, it's great to hire people because you get some, collective action around a vision, around an idea in order to execute. And so Robert Putnam was the person who, the sociologist who was known for his work on social capital. And then you have social exchange theory, which suggests that people make decisions based on an evaluation of costs and rewards associated with specific behaviors, influencing their willingness to collaborate. Which I think, probably has some crossover with groupthink, but ultimately, you're presented with a situation, you kind of evaluate the costs, the benefits, and with the group of people, so the costs and benefits of how it will impact the group of people, and that influences your decisions or your willingness to collaborate. And Peter Blau was an American sociologist who developed that theory. So those are some there in both the psychology and sociology realm. I'm excited to bring on, a couple people who specialize in industrial and organizational psychology that I think will be able to give us a little bit more of a practical sense of these, and talk about it more on a day-to-day of in the workplace. How do we handle these situations? Speaking of organizational behavior, we have, really, I think the most important one here is team effectiveness. So when you have an organization, your team is only going to be as effective as the people that are in it and the leaders. And so team effectiveness talks about the degree in which a team achieves its objectives, maintains its stability, and contributes to the well-being of its members. So this includes collaboration, communication, and leadership. And really, that's what we're getting at here with the Art and Science of Collaboration and with my business, is really how can we help our teams work better together to have more meaning in the work that they do, because a lot of the work, as we know, can be really aimless, and sometimes it just feels like we're kind of running through a mill and we're finishing tasks, which are sometimes just part of the job, is you have to get tasks done. But if you don't feel like you're contributing real meaning and you're not really getting along with your coworkers, or you don't have some meaningful connection with your manager, your supervisor, it's really easy to become isolated. And that's when we get silos in organizations, where we get people who are not contributing effectively. And ultimately, that's our social capital. That's what organizations need. They need their social capital in order to really make the most impact. And so that's really what I'm after, and a lot of what I'm doing is how can we improve collaboration in order to bring meaning and impact to businesses and also to the individuals who are working in the business. And so another piece here, I think actually before I go into that, I want to go back to the Art and Science of Connection, because I think that this is really important, specifically in organizations these days. I was just talking about this with Joey at lunch. It's interesting because I remember working, I always liked working because I liked being with people. So, that was good for me. And I understand that there's a lot of people who are not as extroverted and they prefer to have more structured settings with more organized tasks, whereas I prefer a more fluid system where I'm not doing the exact same thing every day. There are other people who really enjoy and thrive with more of a regimented structure and system. And especially when it comes to working with your hands and working in industrial kind of settings, you really need to have rigid structures in order for there to be compliance and safety and all of that. But ultimately, I think that people are built for connection and are built to be in community and be, part of a larger purpose and, a larger ecosystem. And, I think people can enjoy that or not enjoy that, but I don't know that you could. Well, I don't know. You might be able to argue against it, but I'm going to say I don't think you could really argue against that we're designed for community, because you look at the nature of animals, you look at the nature of humans and just our history. I think we really are designed for connection. And I remember just in the last 10 years of working professionally, I, came across a lot of people who, didn't want to make friends in the workplace, didn't want to, invest in those in their colleagues or whatever it may be, which is fine. And I don't necessarily think that should be under a microscope, and I don't think that should determine their success or their performance necessarily. But I think if we're going to ask people to put in the extra work, especially now that people are working from home and are, have work in their everyday lives. And for a lot of people, they are working, odd hours, especially in today's remote hybrid setup. You are bringing work into your home, you are bringing work into your everyday life. And we know that our colleagues and our coworkers, typically we spend more time with them than we do with our own family members, and maybe even with our own significant other or our children. So it's really, I don't see why we can't highlight the connection that we have with our coworkers, and why we don't, why not try to improve that? Because ultimately that's going to bring us a more fulfilled work experience, and we're going to find more meaning that way. And maybe we'll end up finding that that's not the right job for us, because we actually want our job to look a little bit different, because we do want to connect with our coworkers, but we've discovered that we think we'll connect better with them in a different environment. And so I think that ultimately building more healthy connection and highlighting social health in the workplace will be really beneficial. And I think as tech and AI continues to expand and grow at a rapid rate, I think there's so much good there. But I think there's going to be a rebound. I think there's going to be a shift. People are so excited to adopt all of the next big tech ideas, or how we can incorporate AI to make our lives easier with work. But I can also see how it can bring us more isolation, more solitude, how it can actually decrease our opportunities to connect with other people face to face, in person, whatever that may be. And so I think that, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think that over time, and maybe even more quickly than we think, there's going to be this pendulum of people wanting to get back into social gatherings, wanting to be a part of something more than themselves in person, and wanting to have more social connections. And I think actually we've seen that with COVID, and after that pandemic, people really wanted to get back to a concert. They wanted to experience that collective effervescence that I've talked about before. And this kind of hits on Brene Brown's recent podcast series that she has, I think, on all of her platforms. But it was on, living beyond human scale. There's so much happening and so much change that is happening to us at such a rapid rate that we are not able to keep up with it. We're not designed for that. We're living beyond human scale. Things are happening beyond our ability to adapt biologically, sociologically, psychologically, etc. And so it's really fascinating, and I love to talk about it. But I think we're going to see that more and more in the workplace. And so that's why I really want to bring that sense of connection, collaboration and community into the workplace settings. And if you are somebody who kind of rolls their eyes at that and, finds some distaste in that, I would, encourage you to do some reflection, because maybe you're not in a place that you feel comfortable to do that, or that I don't know, depending on your reaction to what I'm saying, it might be an interesting thing to think about and say, I wonder if I was in a different setting or working on something else or working in a different industry on a different team, if that would be different. I don't know. But all that to say is I think there's something there, and I think we're going to see social health really blossom, and hopefully it will be prioritized in various settings. So and then lastly, talking about the science of collaboration, there's also the neurological components of it. There's actually studies that have found that collaboration activates both oxytocin and dopamine. And so when we engage with others, it usually brings us a feeling of increased, trust, empathy, motivation, etc. And I believe Paul Zak was the neuroeconomist who researched the role of oxytocin in collaboration. So that's really interesting. So all that to say, there's a lot here. It's been a good 30 minutes now. I could keep talking, but I want to save a lot of it for, the guests that we have coming up. So I think it's just important to recognize that collaboration, one of the misconceptions that I'm trying to tackle with this podcast too, is the idea that, collaboration and, how we work with each other, teamwork, culture, leadership, etc., is not just fluffy, stuff for sensitive people. It's really actually a science, and it does impact everyone. And if you're sensitive, well then you're just more sensitive to what it does to you, and you can see what it does to other people. And if you're not sensitive, it still directs, and guides how you react, how you respond, how you work with others, and how others perceive you. So you really can't get away from it. So I think the idea of this podcast is just to highlight the realness of collaboration and what it does in organizations, and how it can help or hurt teams in how they execute the vision and projects, and even in your day-to-day. I mean, a lot of this can be applied to family dynamics, friendship groups, even just engaging with strangers. There's so much of this that stems outside of the workplace, and so I think that's something that I want to make sure I include, so that this podcast isn't just necessarily about the workplace. But that being said, and going back to my other point about connection and social health, is that I think it all permeates into each other. As much as we want to separate work from our personal lives, I think you can definitely do that, and I've learned to do it well, and Joey does it well. But at some level, you want everything you do every day, all day, to be contributing to some sort of greater good, and to be making you feel more whole and more fulfilled, and ultimately living a longer, healthier life. And so I think social health is going to be one of those things that really helps us in longevity, in that conversation of longevity. And I think I would say that's longevity both for individuals and their personal lives, as well as corporations and organizations. So so there's a lot to say there. So the art and science of collaboration. I'm excited for future episodes. I'll be bringing in some guests talking about how do we handle multiple generations in the workplace and just in our society, intergenerational conflict, I'll also be bringing in some experts on communication, looking at the dynamics of communication in team settings and corporate settings, and also bringing in some experts on psychology, and also diversity, equity, inclusion, and human resources. And so there's going to be a lot of good conversations here. One thing you notice is that, the different concepts I've brought up today, a lot of the people that I mentioned who sort of coined these terms or these concepts or researched them, I'm pretty sure most of them are all men, and I'm sure most of them are all Caucasian. So I'd like to make that a little bit more colorful and fun and diverse. And so I'll be bringing in, several experts who are, have their own unique experiences and their own unique offerings to bring to the table. And so I'm super excited for that. But thank you for listening in and for watching. Again, my name is Mackenzie Ellis, and I have my business, Mackenzie James LLC, where we're a consulting and coaching company helping bring alignment to strategy, operations, and culture, specifically in building connection, collaboration, and community. And you can follow us at our social media accounts, which I put in the description there. Mackenzie James Co. is our YouTube. MackenzieJames.co is on Instagram, and then LinkedIn as well. We're at Mackenzie James LLC is the company, and you can also find my personal account on LinkedIn as well. And look forward to having future conversations and releasing some more business content soon, starting next week. And yes, thank you so much. And don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, hit the notification bell, whatever it is. And I will see you again in a week or two. All right. Have a great day.